Most creatives think they need a perfect plan. Paul Pape built a 20-year career by doing the exact opposite. He bent every time life tried to break him. Welcome back to Light-Minded Arts. I'm Brent Lindstrom, and I'm helping you not just become a struggling artist, but become a working creative. Today I have with me Paul Pape. Now, while others burn out, Paul Pape went from wanting to be a wizard to Broadway, to laser-cut furniture, to viral sculptures, to coaching creatives worldwide. His path makes zero sense, till you see the pattern. Today we're breaking down how he built a career by constantly reinventing himself. Tell me a little bit about little Paul. Who were you growing up? What did you want to be? What inspired you?
Well, thanks for having me on the show, Brent. When little Paul, little Paul wanted to be a wizard, is what little Paul wanted to be. I was a kid who loved books. I would rather steal myself away to the closed library than go outside and play during recess. I was the kid who I loved to read and escape, and I love fiction. I love fantasy, and so when I was little, I think I had convinced myself for maybe even a whole year that I was an elf who had been transplanted into a human family. So, no, that's just who I was. It was always, for me, it was about imagination and play, and that's really who I was, and I think that. I still am that person, I think. What is it? We as the older we get, the more we revert to who we were. And that's why I'm Santa for nerds.
This part is one of my favorite parts of Paul's story. Most creatives I've ever met have had that one childhood fantasy that never really left. For Paul, it was being a wizard. And honestly, it explains a lot.
It wasn't until I was in middle school that I got an opportunity to be in a play, and theater kind of changed my life. And when I went into high school, I started acting more and more. I was the lead in a lot of shows, and acting really became, theater became my world. And I loved it because, much like a good book, it's the ability to escape your normal life, and you get to become somebody else. And so I actually graduated high school, and I went into college right away. I declared my major first day. I was going to be an actor. That's what I was going to be. So I went into theater. That was my major. And then about a year into that, I was told by the head of acting that I would never be cast again, because while I had good stage presence, I couldn't memorize anything. So I was horrible to be on stage with.
Oh no. Imagine being told your dream is dead by the person who controls your future. Most people would quit. Paul didn't. This is the first big bend in his story.
And so, as a major, that was kind of a blow. And but while I was there, I threw myself into it. I'm a workaholic as well, as most entrepreneurs are. And so, when I was an undergrad, I was also working in the scene shop, helping to build everything. And one day I was there, and this is after the professor had told me I wouldn't act anymore. The head of the department came down and said, "We're just having a chat, whatnot." And I told him about the acting thing, and he said, "How about, would you be interested in learning everything?" And I'm a sponge. I'm like, absolutely. And so he taught me every aspect of theater, from maintenance and management to box office and directing, and then eventually into design. And design clicked for me. That was just one of those things that, as soon as I saw it, I knew that was for me. And so scenic design and costume design and property design, those are the three things that I worked in. And ended up going to grad school for it. I won some regional awards, some national awards, and then when I went into grad school and specialized in it, I started winning international awards with it as well. I was really good at it. I loved it. And then I graduated. I went to the University of California, San Diego, and attached to the University of California, San Diego is a playhouse called the La Jolla Playhouse. And it's considered a Lort B house, which is basically like a staging ground for Broadway. It's the house before you go to the big time. And as a graduate student there, you can actually intern with the La Jolla Playhouse as part of the program. And if you're good, they'll actually let you design a show or two. And I was assisting and designing at the same time after I had graduated. So I just graduated, I put me on as full-time assistant, and then they gave me a couple shows to design. And I was working with this guy named John Arnone, who at the time had either 4 or 6 shows on Broadway, which for a designer, that's kind of like the apex in the States. You've done well when you're on Broadway. And to have that many shows on Broadway, you're doing really well. And so I was talking to him one day. We were working on a show, and I was talking to him. I said, so what's it like? I said, I just graduated. I'm new to this business. What's it like being at the top? And to this day, I credit this man for being honest.
Okay, this next part shocked me. Paul finally meets someone at the top of the industry, and what he tells Paul completely flips the dream on its head. How would you like to get this kind of news?
And what he told me is, it sucks. It's not great. And I said, please elaborate. And his answer was, he goes, as a freelance designer, which is what you are and what he is, he spent 48 weeks out of the year on the road traveling to different theaters. He had an apartment in New York that he was paying rent on that he never got to see. He was paying 6 to 7 assistants to do all the paperwork because he couldn't keep up with it because he had to keep finding new jobs. And he says, if you want to settle down, this is not the job to have, because you're constantly working for peanuts, but you're never around. So he knew I was engaged at the time to my current wife, and he's like, it's not the life for you. And I was like, this would have been good information 3 years ago before I got into grad school. But it's useful information to have. And I'm one of those people who, my philosophy in life is bend, don't break. So instead of staying rigid with something that I know is going to eventually lead to my downfall and you're going to end up breaking out of it, I bend. I kind of switch gears, and I'm okay with that. I love being fluid when it comes to business decisions or like the trajectory of my life, because I'm not a predestination kind of guy. I'm a journey kind of guy. So I like to see where things take me.
Sorry for the interruption. Just one thing. If you like podcasts, go on over and check out my podcast. Also, I just did a wonderful interview over at A Writer's Day. I'm going to put the link in the description below. Check out their podcast. Great people over there. Now, back to our show.
And at the time, one of the shows that I was designing ended up being, it was a workshop at the time, but it ended up being this Pulitzer Prize winning show called I Am My Own Wife by Doug Wright. And I was working with him and the actor. It's a solo show, and I was the scenic designer for it. And we were just workshopping it, but I come from Nebraska. I'm back in Nebraska now because that's where my wife's family is. And my undergrad was here, and like our A class, our top budget was $2,500. So we could make 3-story houses with $2,500. We knew how to work with nothing and make a lot out of it. And when I was working at La Jolla, they were doing this workshop, and they're like, we're going to give you $5,000 cash to do this workshop. Now to them, $5,000 was nothing because they were building $1 million shows. But to me, that was enough to build whatever I could. And so I designed and constructed this entire set. Now, as a scenic designer, one of the things that you do is one of the tools that you have is you create something called a scale model, which is a smaller version of the bigger thing. And that's so that people can work off of it and understand what your vision is. You can do renderings too, but the 3-dimensional version allows people to actually interact with it and be able to see it for what it is. Well, the show that I was designing, I Am My Own Wife, is all about furniture. And there were hundreds of chairs. And at the time, this is back in the early 2000s, like 2001, 2002, I had to hand cut out of cardstock 100 of these chairs. And that's a tedious, time-consuming process. And I'm probably like the 90th chair, and I'm like, there's got to be a better way to do this. And so I'm one of those people who I love to go shopping. I'm just one of those people who, not the act of shopping, but I love to walk around and see everything. I'm just I'm a sponge. I like to observe what's around. And I was walking through a store at that time, and I saw the greeting cards, and I saw one that looked like it had lace work on the front of it. And I picked it up and I was looking at it, and I noticed that this white card had brown edges where the lace work was. And my mind put 2 and 2 together. I'm like, this has been cut out with fire or a laser. And I was like, that could work. And so I called Hallmark, and I was like, hey, Hallmark, who does your lasering? And they're like, And I'm like, it took me a while, but I eventually got the information. And I went to this company in New Jersey, and they had, we see people with laser cutters on their desktop these days,
Sure.
But back then they didn't have those. And the laser that they had took up a warehouse.
Oh, wow.
It was this huge machine. And I asked him, I said, if I designed scale model furniture that was flat, could you guys laser it out so that I could have it so that all that we had to do was color it in, cut it out, and then fold it so that it became like 3-dimensional furniture. And it took some doing, but we actually figured it out. And so that was my very first product that I designed, called Pop-Out Furniture. It was laser die cut paper furniture for scenic designers, architects, and dollhouses. And it went really well. I was very successful with it. I think I got picked up by a lot of distributors, made about $500,000 on that product.
Here's the crazy part. Paul didn't get rich by chasing his dream. He got rich by solving a tiny annoying problem inside his industry. That's a creative superpower that most people overlook.
And that was right out of grad school. So that was my first audit with the IRS, because I went from a $19,000 a year grad student to like $500,000, and they're like, "You're dealing drugs." I'm like, "No, I just had a really good idea." So it was crazy, but what that did is it opened my eyes to different possibilities. Instead of being rigid with an idea where I could make $1,500 a show that lasts 6 weeks and then go somewhere else and make another $1,500 to $2,500, I actually had sat still, figured out, solved a different problem within the same world, and then created a business around it. And that business lasted about 2 years. And then I was still doing the trade show circuit, and I was really successful at it. But one day I was sitting in my trade show, and the booth next to me had lasers, little home lasers. And I was like, well, okay, the writing's on the wall here. Because now you don't have to go to this factory, you don't have to go to this warehouse-sized laser company to be able to make these things. Anybody could do it at home. And so I was like, well, okay, so here's another opportunity to bend or break. I could stay the course and then just be rigid in it and try my best to make it work, even though lasers came out. And then shortly after that, 3D printers came out. So why would I get paper furniture when I can actually 3D print a fully working functional version of that? I'm like, I could have changed the business model to incorporate all that, but the reality is that it was a good idea and its time was over. So it's time to kind of switch. It's time to bend. And so then...
Okay, so this is where Paul's story goes from interesting to unbelievable. One tiny little sculpt posted by someone else changes everything.
And I made $50,000 in 2 weeks. And she's like, I think you got this under control. And so that was 20 years ago. And the adage of bend, don't break has been there the entire time. Like I said, I made 1,000 Miis, all hand sculpted. They're about this big. And I was charging $50 a piece for them, which was not a lot of money. But then people started asking for other things. Xbox is like, oh, we got to jump on the Avatar thing. So they came out with Xbox avatars, and then World of Warcraft was big, so I started making figures there. And then people started asking, well, can you put 2 of those little figures together for the top of my cake? I'm like, yeah, sure, I can do that. And then, oh, well, so now I'm doing cake toppers as well as these figures. And then somebody's like, well, I'm not married yet, but I want to propose. Can you do an engagement ring box? And I'm like, yeah, sure, I can. And they're like, well, we're huge Harry Potter fans. We'd love to have the golden snitch as a ring box. I'm like, yeah, sure, let's do that. And so from there, people, and I'd post all of these things online when I finished them. I'd say, oh, this is the next thing I made, whatever. And what happened is people started asking for everything. And I've done 20 years, I've done well over 1,100 individually custom pieces. And that's not including anything that I've had to make more than once, because some people have the same idea, over the course of 20 years.
Hey folks, if you're enjoying this, don't forget to check out Paul Pape at his website. Links in the description or below. And also, if you want to catch the whole interview, I also have a link to the podcast with the full interview there. So check it out. See you next time.